Welcome to your Daily 5 for Monday, February 24th, 2025. I did a 5 last week on Thursday where I was talking about generative tools, actually positively, which is a rarity for me, but I mentioned in that 5 that one of the problems I've had with a lot of the discussions and the kind of viewpoints on these tools is that people tend to fall into these extremist camps, either all against it or all in on it. And I heard actually there's a show that I listened to that recently changed formats and has become basically an AI show, which I'm not the most thrilled about, but whatever. It's one of those things. It happens. I understand everybody's jumping on board with it because it's the hot thing. But in any event, during that show, one of the hosts was talking about how they were basically, again, all in on AI, the position of I want all of it and everything I do all the time, recording me, whatever, I don't care, because they have such a belief in the promise or the possible promise of these tools. And at one point, this person said, I understand I'm saying this from a privileged position, but then went on about how they still were going to be all in on it. And I thought that is exactly the issue I have with a lot of the people who are the biggest proponents of this stuff. If you look at many of them, they all look very similar, and they tend to come from privileged positions. And, if you just, and I'm trying to keep this as apolitical as possible, but if you just go back a few years, the idea of, let's say that there was a massive database of information about you and everybody that you ever talked to, what could ever really be the result of that? Well, guess what? In many countries right now, including this one, there are a number of people who are legitimately concerned. I listened to a story about some individuals who were keeping their children home because they were afraid they'd be grabbed out of school. Now, again, I don't want to get political necessarily, but that's a reality. It is happening. There is a fear in this country right now, and there has been in other countries for a couple of years. It's not unique to this country. It's kind of going around. And so that makes me think, it's easy to say, let's just give all these tools every bit of data that it can get its hands on when you are not in a position of fear. But the thing is, many of these people don't seem to be able to think past themselves as far as what that could mean for people who aren't in privileged positions. They seem to have this idea that the information is only going to be collected on those who are willing participants, when in fact, many of the current hardware and tools and things that are around, they're not restricting themselves to the people who give consent. Let's not kid ourselves. Many of these tools do not care about the consent of others. They've been operating that way almost since their inception. And in fact, many of them still are, even if they say, we need your input on it. That assumes that everybody around you then also gives that input, because many of these things are ingesting information not just about the people using them, but anyone they interact with. And that's where the idea of, I just want it to collect everything because it benefits me. That is a, frankly, very short-sighted and selfish way to look at things. It is a failure of being able to see beyond yourself. And that really bothers me because it's coming from, in many cases, people who otherwise do seem to be empathetic and thoughtful individuals. But in this particular one area, because they are such, believers in whatever this stuff could potentially be, we don't even know if it will be, but could be, that it's blinding them to the fact that this is the type of thing that's not going to only affect them. This is not really technology that can be contained to an individual, or at least not in many of the ways that we're seeing it. That's not to say that it might not go that route. The idea of small models that were, run locally and that only you can control. Sure. But that's not the majority of the stuff that we're seeing. Most of what we're seeing is let's just suck in everything, all of it, and that'll make us a better tool. But it doesn't really tell us what the information will later be used for or who will be having access to it. And those things can change. You can have a company with the best ethics, pure morals, that are trying to do everything correct, and they can be acquired in 15 minutes by a company that could not care less. And guess what they just acquired along with the company? All that information. And so this is the thing that really bothers me about the purists, the zealots who think all this stuff should just have access to everything. I think it's as misguided and limited as a position as people who think there shouldn't be any of this stuff, as if that's even possible anymore. So again, I wish some of these people would take a step back, think beyond themselves, and understand that there are people who have valid concerns about this stuff, and that when they just say, give it everything, they're not just giving everything of themselves, but others too, without their consent. Later.